Blood stains the snow crimson. Elwyn Frost stands in the center of the courtyard, silver-white hair whipping in the winter wind. Her hand presses against her belly, 3 months swollen with life. 6 masked figures circle her blades gleaming in the moonlight. They thought she would be easy prey, a weak Omega, a broken thing. They were catastrophically wrong. Violet light erupts from her skin like a star going nova. The assassins stumble backwards, shields raised, but nothing can stop what comes next. A wolf materializes behind her, through her, around her. Massive, ethereal. Silver fur that glows like captured moonlight. Eyes the color of winter storms and ancient prophecy. The wolf throws back its head and howls. The sound shakes the very foundations of Nightshade Keep. One assassin breaks formation, runs. The others follow, scrambling over each other in their terror, abandoning weapons and pride alike. The silver wolf watches them flee with eyes that have seen empires rise and fall. Then it turns those impossible violet eyes to the woman at its center. Elwyn Frost, 23 years old. Nobody. Nothing. The girl they called broken. The girl who became a queen. But that victory lies ahead. That power sleeps dormant still. This moment, this triumph, waits at the end of a road paved with blood and choice and desperate survival. The story begins 3 months earlier, in a castle, in a corridor, with a door that should have stayed closed. The summons arrived on a Tuesday. Elwyn had been tending her small herb garden when the messenger appeared. A beta in formal livery, his face carefully blank as he handed her a scroll sealed with gray wax. The dire wolf sigil of House Nightshade pressed into the seal. The ruling house of the Northern Territories. The most powerful pack in 7 kingdoms. She broke the seal with the trembling fingers. The Alpha King of the North requires your presence immediately. No explanation, no context. Just a royal command that could not be refused. The messenger waited in stony silence while she packed her single bag. A change of clothes, her mother's silver comb, the small knife she used for cutting herbs. The journey took 2 days. Nightshade Keep rose from the landscape like a threat made stone. Black towers clawed at gray skies. Walls thick enough to withstand sieges. Windows like watchful eyes. Elwyn had never seen anything so magnificent. So terrifying. She was nobody. A white-haired Omega from a village with no name. Her family had no pack claim, no bloodline worth mentioning. She had spent 23 years being invisible, being careful, being forgettable. Her hair marked her as different, silver white like fresh snow under moonlight. Her eyes were worse, violet with threads of silver, a color that made people uncomfortable, made them whisper. Some called her touched by the old gods. Others said cursed. Mostly they just avoided her. She had accepted her fate long ago, a solitary Omega, unmated, unwanted. She would live on the edges of pack territory, tend her gardens, and disappear into history without a trace. The summons shattered that careful invisibility like a stone through ice. A servant met her at the gates, a young woman with kind eyes and a hurried manner. Take the main corridor to the 3rd level. Wait in the receiving hall. Someone will fetch you when the king is ready. Simple instructions. Elwyn repeated them in her head as she navigated the maze of corridors. Stone walls, flickering torches, the smell of smoke and old power. She climbed stairs worn smooth by centuries of feet, turned left at the tapestry of the Great Hunt, right at the statue of the first Nightshade King. Or was it left at the statue? She stood at an intersection of 3 identical corridors, panic rising in her throat. Every passage looked the same. Gray stone, shadows, the distant sound of voices she could not locate. She chose the middle path because it seemed brightest. 5 minutes later, she was hopelessly lost. The corridors grew narrower, darker. The voices faded until she heard only her own footsteps echoing off stone. She should turn back, should find a guard, should not be wandering the private wings of the castle like some foolish girl from a cautionary tale. But then she heard it, a sound that stopped her in her tracks, a low groan, unmistakably masculine, rough-edged with something between frustration and desperate need. It came from behind a door to her left. Heavy wood, iron bands, the direwolf sigil carved deep into the grain. Private chambers, the Alpha King's chambers. She should walk away, should run, should be anywhere but here. Her hand moved to the door without permission. Fingers pressing against cold iron, the door stood slightly ajar, open, just wide enough to reveal a sliver of firelight, just wide enough to see inside, just wide enough to destroy everything. Elwyn pushed the door open another inch. The chamber beyond was dominated by a massive hearth. Flames danced across stone walls, casting shadows that moved like living things. Furs covered a bed large enough for 3 people. Weapons hung on the walls like art. A crown sat on a side table discarded like an afterthought, but none of that registered, because the man in the chair before the fire held her entire attention. He was magnificent in ways her inexperienced mind struggled to comprehend. Broad shoulders that spoke of battlefield strength. A chest sculpted with muscle that came from wielding a sword since childhood. Skin that glowed bronze in the firelight marked with scars that told stories of survival. His hair was auburn, the color of autumn leaves before they fall. Disheveled, falling across a face that was both beautiful and brutal. Strong jaw shadowed with stubble. Aristocratic nose. Lips parted as another groan escaped him. But it was what he was doing that made Elowen's core clench with heat she had no name for. His hand wrapped around his rigid length, stroking with a rhythm that was simultaneously controlled and desperate, like a man at war with himself. His other hand gripped the arm of the chair so tightly his knuckles had gone white. His eyes were closed, brow furrowed, jaw working as if he were fighting to stay silent. She should leave, should run, should pretend she never saw this. Her body refused to obey. The air in the room shifted, like the moment before lightning strikes, like the breath before a wolf howls. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. His eyes snapped open, storm gray, wild, feral, locked directly onto her frozen form in the doorway. Time stopped. The world tilted sideways, and Elowen felt something inside her chest tear open and reach toward him like a flower turning toward the sun. It was violent, undeniable, terrifying, a pull so strong it drove her to her knees on the cold stone floor. Her hands pressed against her heart as if that could stop the sensation of being unmade and remade in a single breath. Every nerve ending in her body caught fire. The bond, the mate bond, the sacred connection that stripped away choice and free will. She gasped, a small broken sound. Across the room, Caspian, Nightshade Alpha, King of the North, and Warden of the Northern Territories stared at the pale-haired Omega girl kneeling in his doorway. He felt the bond wrap around his ribs like iron chains, felt every instinct scream at him to go to her, to claim what the moms had apparently decided belonged to him. But stronger than instinct was memory. He had seen what the bond did, how it twisted alphas into possessive tyrants, how it reduced omegas to nothing more than vessels, how it consumed everything in its path until nothing remained but ash and regret. For 5 years, he had refused every attempt by the council to force a political mating, had watched other alphas fall to the bond's demands, had sworn he would never inflict that cage on another person. And now fate had laughed at his careful control and thrown this girl into his path. Her scent hit him like a physical blow. Honey and winter roses. Something clean and sharp that made his wolf howl with recognition. Want, need, mine, no. He forced the wolf down with brutal efficiency, forced his body under control, forced himself to stillness when everything in him screamed to move. Get up! His voice came out rougher than intended, colder. He had managed to adjust his clothing, though his body still thrummed with unfulfilled need and something far more dangerous. The bone-deep recognition of a mate bond snapping into place. Elowen's violet eyes were wide with shock, her pale face flushed, one hand still pressed against her chest as if she could physically hold back what was happening between them. Slowly, shakily. She rose to her feet. One. She started, but the words died in her throat. You shouldn't be here. Caspian stood, put distance between them. Even as everything in him howled in protest, his wolf wanted her close, wanted her scent, wanted her beneath him, around him, his in every way that mattered. He crushed the impulse with the discipline that had kept him alive through wars and political machinations and the endless grinding weight of the crown. How did you get past the guards? I was summoned. Her voice was barely above a whisper. To Nightshade Keep. But I got lost in the corridors, and the door was open. And I heard. She stopped abruptly, color flooding her cheeks. She heard him. Of all the ways to meet his mate, if the bond had truly chosen her, this was perhaps the most humiliating, the most vulnerable, the most human. For either could speak again, heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Captain Marcus appeared in the doorway, hand on his sword hilt, 2 guards flanking him. His weathered face went carefully blank as he took in the scene, his king barely composed. An unknown Omega in the private solar. Your Grace, Marcus said carefully. Is there a problem? The girl was lost. Caspian's tone brooked no argument. She was summoned to Nightshade Keep but never properly escorted. His eyes cut to Elowen. What's your name, Elowen Frost? Your Grace. Frost. No family name. Bastard born or unclaimed. No pack protection. No bloodline allegiance. Exactly the kind of Omega the council would devour alive if they knew what had just happened in this room. Take her to the guest quarters in the East Wing, Caspian commanded. See that she's fed, given proper clothing, Assigned a personal guard. Marcus's eyebrows rose fractionally. A guard, Your Grace. For protection or for protection? Caspian cut him off. His voice dropped into the alpha tone that made even his most seasoned warriors flinch. No one questions her, no one interrogates her, no one touches her. Is that clear? Perfectly, Your Grace. As the guards moved to escort Elowen away, she cast one last glance over her shoulder. The bond pulled taut between them like a rope. Caspian had to lock his knees to keep from following. The moment she disappeared from sight, he sagged against the chair, ran both hands through his hair. Gods damn it all to hell. The door to Elowen's assigned quarters closed with a soft click. She stood in the center of the room trying to process what had just happened. The bond hummed beneath her skin, a constant pull toward the man 4 corridors away. She could feel him even through stone and distance, feel his frustration, his conflict, his fear. Not fear of her, fear of what he might become. A knock at the door made her jump. A servant entered, young, female, carrying a tray of food and a bundle of clothing. She set both on the table by the window without meeting Elowen's eyes. His Grace says you're to eat, to rest. Someone will come for you in the morning. The servant left before Elowen could ask questions. She moved to the window, looked out over the courtyard where guards patrolled in the moonlight. This room was more luxurious than anywhere she had ever stayed. Soft furs piled on a bed large enough for 2 people, a fire crackling in a stone hearth, windows that overlooked the snow-covered grounds. She should feel safe, protected. Instead, she felt like her skin was too tight, like something beneath her ribs was trying to claw its way out and run back to him. The bond. It had to be the bond everyone whispered about in frightened tones, the sacred connection that stripped away choice, that turned Omegas into possessions and Alphas into tyrants. She pressed her hand against her chest, felt her heart race beneath her palm. Somewhere in the castle, Caspian Nightshade felt that same pull, that same desperate need. Neither of them slept that night. Dawn came cold and gray. Elowen was woken by pounding on her door. Not a polite knock, a demand. She barely had time to dress before 3 council guards entered, their faces hard, their hands on their weapons. You're to come with us. We're the council chamber. Now, they did not give her time to ask more questions, did not answer when she tried. They simply marched her through corridors filled with servants who stopped to stare, down staircases worn smooth by centuries, into the heart of the castle where power lived and breathed. The council chamber was a circular room. 12 high-ranking Alphas seated in ornate chairs that might as well have been thrones. Torchlight cast harsh shadows across their faces, making them look like judges presiding over an execution. Guards lined the walls. Too many guards for one unarmed Omega girl. This was not a hearing. This was a trial. Lord Ravencroft sat at the head of the council, silver beard bristling, cold eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. Beside him, Councillor Morgan, a woman in her 50s with a face like carved ice and a mind like a steel trap. Elowen Frost, Ravencroft's voice echoed off stone walls. You stand before the Alpha Council under grave suspicion. Do you deny that you were found in the private chambers of His Grace King Caspian Nightshade last night? Elowen's throat went dry. 1. I was lost. The door was open. I didn't mean silence. The command cracked through the air like a whip. Ravencroft rose from his seat, descended the steps toward her. You will speak only when asked direct questions. Your opinion on what happened is irrelevant. Behind him, more people filed into the chamber. Nobles, servants, guards. Within minutes, over 200 people crowded into the space. All eyes on her, all witnessing her humiliation. A woman pushed to the front. Beautiful, elegant, high-born Omega in silken jewels. Isolde Ravenna, her perfect features twisted with contempt. She seduced him. Isolde's voice rang clear, accusatory. I saw her watching His Grace at dinner last week. The way she looked at him, like a predator, like she was planning something. Lies. Elowen had never attended a formal dinner, had never even seen Caspian before last night. But no one asked for her side. Omega tricks. Another council member spoke up. They learned to use their scent, their heat, to manipulate Alphas into enough. Caspian's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. He stood at the back of the room. When he had entered, Elowen did not know. But he was there now, tall, imposing, every inch the Alpha King. His crown sat heavy on his head, his formal clothes immaculate. But his eyes, his storm-gray eyes burned with barely controlled fury. The girl was lost. She stumbled into the wrong corridor. There is no conspiracy here. No seduction. Your Grace. Ravencroft's tone was respectful but firm. With all due respect, the bond has clearly manifested. We can all sense it, the way you defend her, the way your scent changes when she's near. This is not rational thought. This is bond compulsion. I am perfectly rational. Then prove it, Ravencroft gestured to Eowyn, kneeling now, surrounded by guards and witnesses in judgment. Submit her for proper verification. Let our healers examine her, test her bloodline, determine if she is fit to be bound to a king. If she passes, the bond will be recognized. If not, he shrugged. The bond will be severed for the good of the realm. Eowyn felt the blood drain from her face. Severing a bond was supposed to be excruciatingly painful, potentially fatal for the weaker party, usually the Omega. And if I refuse the examination, Morgan leaned forward, then you will be charged with sedition and conspiracy against the crown, the penalty for which is death. The room spun. This was not about the bond. This was about control, about reminding everyone, including their king, that the council's powers superseded even divine will. Eowyn looked at Caspian, silently begging him to intervene. He opened his mouth, closed it. His jaw worked as if he were physically forcing words back down his throat. He was hesitating, and in that hesitation, Eowyn saw the truth. He was an alpha king, but he was also bound by laws older than his crown. If he defied the council too openly, he risked civil war. Rebellion. The fracturing of the entire northern territory. She was one Omega. The north was thousands. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Fine. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I'll submit to your examination. She thought she heard Caspian make a sound, something between a growl and a wounded animal's cry, but she did not look at him again. She could not. Ravencroft smiled, cold and satisfied. The examination will take place at dawn tomorrow. Until then, you will be confined to secure quarters in the lower levels. He gestured to the guards. Take her. They seized her arms, hauled her to her feet. The crowd parted as they dragged her through. She kept her head high, refused to let them see her crania. As she passed Caspian, their eyes met for a single heartbeat. The bond screamed between them, but he said nothing, did nothing. And Eowyn understood. Some cages were made of politics and power. Some were made of silence. The cell in the lower levels was cold. Stone walls wept with condensation. A single barred window let in pale light. They had given her a thin blanket, a bucket for waste, nothing else. Eowyn sat on the stone floor and tried not to think about what the examination would entail, what they would do to her, how they would determine if she was worthy. She tried not to think about Caspian's silence, tried not to feel the bond pulling at her ribs like a hook in flesh. She failed at both. Night fell, hours passed, she dozed fitfully, woke to footsteps outside her cell, voices, guards changing shift. They spoke quietly, but not quietly enough. Ravencroft's orders: keep her here until the examination. Then transfer her to the old tower. Transfer, you mean imprison. Call it what you want. If she has old blood like they suspect, she's too dangerous to leave free. Bond or no bond. What about the king? What about him? The council will offer him a proper match once this Omega is dealt with. Someone suitable, someone controllable, dealt with. The words echoed in Eowyn's mind long after the guards moved on. She had been a fool to think this would end anyway, but badly. The council did not care about bonds or divine will or love. They cared about power, and she was a threat to that power simply by existing. By the time dawn light crept through the narrow window, Eowyn had made her decision. She would run, even if it meant severing the bond, even if it killed her. She would not let herself become a tool for powerful men to use against each other. She would rather die free than live as a weapon. The lock on her cell was old, simple. She had learned to pick locks from a blacksmith's daughter in her village, a skill taught just in case you ever need to escape something worse than boredom. She had never imagined she would need to escape a palace. The hairpin she had hidden in her braid was thin, strong. It took 15 minutes of careful work before the lock clicked open. The quarter beyond was empty. The guards had moved to the far end. She could hear their voices, laughter. They were not expecting her to escape. Eowyn moved like a ghost, bare feet silent on stone. She found the servants' passage exactly where the kind-faced girl from her first day had mentioned it, a narrow tunnel that led from the lower levels to the outer walls. The passage was dark, damp. It smelled of earth and old secrets. She trailed one hand along the wall for guidance, moved forward one step at a time. She had made it perhaps 50 yards when she heard footsteps behind her. Not running, walking, steady and deliberate. I know you can hear me. Caspian's voice echoed through the passage. Your heartbeat is too fast. You're afraid. Eowyn froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. I'm not going to stop you. His voice grew closer. I'm not going to command you or drag you back or lock you in a tower like the council wants. That's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? The words came out before she could stop them. Because I need to say something before you go, and you deserve to hear it without guards or councils or crowns between us. Slowly, Elwyn turned. In the dim light filtering through cracks in the stonework, she could barely make out his silhouette. He had come alone. No guards, no weapons. Just a king standing in a forgotten passage with his hands empty. How did you know I would run? Because I would have done the same thing. He took a step closer, just close enough that she could see his face now. The exhaustion, the pain, the raw honesty. I felt your terror when you overheard the guards. I felt your despair when you realized the council never intended to let you go free. And I felt the exact moment you decided death was preferable to captivity. His voice cracked. It nearly broke me. Elwyn, feeling you give up, feeling you prepare to sever the bond even if it killed you. What else was I supposed to do? Her own voice shook. They're going to lock me away regardless of what the examination finds. Use me as leverage against you or kill me if I prove inconvenient. I won't live like that. I can't. I know. Caspian ran a hand through his hair. A gesture she was learning meant he was struggling with something. And that's why I'm here. To tell you that you're right to run, that I won't chase you, that I won't use the bond to compel you back or send soldiers after you or hunt you down like some prize to be claimed. Elwyn stared at him, confused. You're giving me permission to leave. I'm giving you freedom. He took a shaky breath. The bond terrifies me, Elwyn. Not because I don't want you. God, I want you so much it's like burning alive. But because I'm terrified of what it could do to you. The bond doesn't ask permission. It doesn't care about consent or choice or autonomy. It just takes. His storm gray eyes found hers in the darkness. I've seen what happens when alphas let the bond rule them. I've seen omegas become shells of themselves, their entire existence reduced to serving their mate's needs. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell cedar and snow and something uniquely him. I would rather lose you than become the cage that traps you. I would rather spend the rest of my life feeling the emptiness of a severed bond than know I destroyed the fire in you. The strength, the way you looked at the council and refused to break even when they tried to crush you. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You're magnificent, Elwyn Frost. And I won't let anyone, including myself, take that from you. The raw vulnerability in his words cracked something open in Elwyn's chest. You're an alpha king. You're supposed to claim what's yours, command, dominate, take. Maybe I'm a terrible alpha then, he spread his hands, because all I want is for you to have a choice, real choice, not one forced by divine law or council decree or bond compulsion. His eyes held hers. So here it is. You can leave right now. Take the passage to the stables. I'll make sure there's a horse ready. Supplies, coin, a letter granting you safe passage through the north. The council will be furious, but I'll deal with them. He swallowed hard. You'll be free. And if I stay, the question came out barely above a whisper. If you stay, it has to be because you want to. Not because the bond demands it. Not because you feel obligated or afraid or trapped. But because you looked at all your options, including freedom, and chose this. He took one more step, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Chose us. Chose me. Not the king, not the alpha the bond says you're meant for, just me. The man who's terrified of losing you and even more terrified of keeping you. Elwyn's mind raced. She could leave. He was offering everything she thought she wanted. Escape. Anonymity. Freedom from councils and politics and predetermined fates. But standing in this forgotten passage, looking at a king who had just offered to let her break both their hearts for the sake of her autonomy, she realized something. She did not want to run anymore. Not from him. You're an idiot. Her voice was thick with tears and laughter, and something that felt dangerously like love. Caspian blinked. What you're standing here offering me freedom, respecting my choice, seeing me as a person instead of a prize. And you think that makes you a terrible alpha? She took a step toward him, then another. You're the only alpha who has ever asked me what I want. The only one who has ever looked at me and seen someone worth protecting instead of someone to be controlled. Her violet eyes blazed. You think I want to run from that? I choose to stay. The words came out firm, clear. Not because the bond tells me to. Not because I'm afraid of the council or seduced by power or have nowhere else to go. I'm staying because you just gave me the most precious thing anyone has ever offered me. She reached for his hand. Genuine choice. And I'm choosing you. The man who would rather suffer than see me caged. The king who came alone into a dark passage to set me free. The hope that blazed across his face was almost painful to witness. Are you certain? Terrified, she admitted, but certain. For a moment they simply stood there, the bond humming between them with something that felt less like chains and more like wings. Then Caspian smiled, truly smiled, and it transformed his entire face. We're both fools then. Probably. He reached up, cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing across her cheekbones with infinite gentleness. When I kiss you, I won't stop. Good. His lips met hers. It was nothing like she imagined. Not forceful, not demanding, tender, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She did not pull away. She leaned in. The bond sang. They walked back through the passage together, side by side, not touching except for their joined hands. And for the first time since the bond had manifested, Elwyn felt like they were walking towards something, instead of running from it. Neither of them noticed the shadow that detached from the wall behind them. Neither saw the glint of steel in the darkness. The council had sent someone to ensure Elwyn never made it back alive. And tomorrow, when she should have been safe, when she should have been protected, everything would shatter like glass. But tonight, in this moment, in the darkness of a forgotten passage, two people who had been told their love was predestined discovered something far more powerful. They chose it anyway. The whispers started before dawn. By the time Elwyn and Caspian emerged from the secret passage into the castle proper, half the household already knew. A king and an Omega, alone in the darkness, walking side by side with their hands joined like equals. Scandal moved through Nightshade Keep like wildfire. Servants paused in corridors to stare. Guards exchanged glances heavy with speculation. Nobles whispered behind jeweled hands. The unmated Omega who had been found in the king's chambers. The king who had defended her before the council. Now this. Elwyn felt their eyes like brands against her skin. But Caspian did not let go of her hand. He walked through his castle with his head high and his Omega at his side, daring anyone to comment, daring them to question. The Alpha King of the North bowed to no one, not even propriety. They reached the main halls, the sun crested the horizon. Captain Marcus stood waiting, his weathered face carefully neutral. But his eyes saw everything. The way Caspian's thumb traced circles on Elwyn's palm, the way she leaned slightly into his warmth, the bond that hummed between them like a living thing. Your Grace, Marcus inclined his head. The council has requested an audience. Immediately. Let them wait. Caspian's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Arrange for Elwyn to be moved to the guest quarters on the royal level. The Rose Suite. Assign 2 guards to her door, not to keep her in, to keep others out. He turned to Elwyn, his storm gray eyes soft in a way she had never seen. Rest. Eat. I'll deal with the council. And if they demand another trial, then they'll learn what happens when they mistake my patience for weakness. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that sent heat spiraling through her entire body. The gesture was deliberate, public, a declaration to everyone watching. This Omega was under his protection. Anyone who touched her would answer to him. The council chamber was a battlefield dressed in ceremony. 12 alphas sat in judgment, their faces carved from stone and displeasure. Lord Ravencroft at the head, silver beard bristling, cold eyes that had condemned men to death without blinking. Beside him, Counselor Morrigan, ice in human form, her fingers steepled beneath her chin as Caspian entered. Your Grace, Ravencroft's voice dripped with false courtesy. We heard you took a walk last night with the prisoner. She was never a prisoner, merely a guest awaiting examination. A guest. Morrigan's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. How progressive. Most kings would call an Omega found in their private chambers by a different name. Caspian took his seat at the head of the table. Every inch the Alpha King, crown gleaming, posture perfect. But his scent betrayed him. Cedar and snow in the sharp edge of barely controlled fury. Say what you came to say. I have better things to do than listen to veiled insults. Very well. Ravencroft leaned forward. The bond has manifested. Every wolf in this castle can sense it. The question is what you intend to do about it. Nothing. The word fell like a stone into still water. Nothing. The bond is between Elwyn and myself. It concerns no one else. You are the Alpha King. Everything you do concerns the realm. Morgan's voice was clinical. Precise. An unmated king is vulnerable. A king bound to an Omega of unknown bloodline is catastrophic. We have enemies, Your Grace. Rivals who would exploit any weakness. Then perhaps you should focus on those enemies instead of persecuting an innocent woman. Innocent. Ravencroft's laugh was bitter. She walked into your chambers uninvited, triggered a bond that has made you irrational, defied council authority by escaping custody. And you call her innocent. She was lost. She escaped because she overheard your guards discussing her imprisonment, and she is more rational than anyone in this room. Caspian rose, his alpha presence flooding the chamber like a tidal wave. Every wolf in the room felt the pressure, felt their own wolves cower beneath the weight of his dominance. Elwyn Frost will remain at Nightshade Keep as my guest. She will not be examined. She will not be interrogated. She will not be threatened. Anyone who violates these terms will find themselves exiled from the Northern Territories. Is that understood silence? Heavy, suffocating. Then Morgan spoke. You risk civil war for an Omega you've known 3 days. I risk nothing. I'm preventing one. His eyes swept across the council. Test me on this, please. I would welcome the opportunity to remind you all who holds the crown. He turned and left. Behind him, the council sat in stunned silence. Ravencroft's hands clenched into fists. The Omega had made the king reckless, emotional, exactly what they had feared. She had to be dealt with. Soon. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of careful reconstruction, of building something fragile and new between the ruins of what the council had tried to destroy. Elwyn lived in the Rose Suite, a chamber fit for royalty. Silk curtains, a bed piled high with furs, windows overlooking gardens that bloomed even in winter. 2 guards stood constant watch at her door, not as jailers but as protection. She was free to move through the castle, to walk the gardens, to sit in the library and read books she had only dreamed of touching. But freedom had limits. The council watched, always. Servants reported her movements. Nobles whispered when she passed. Isolde Ravenna made a point of appearing wherever Elwyn went, beautiful and perfect and utterly contemptuous. Elwyn learned to ignore them. She had survived worse than whispers. A few days into her new role, Caspian found her in the kitchens. She was elbow-deep in flour, helping the head cook reorganize the dry goods storage. The woman had been complaining about rats getting into the grain. Elwyn had suggested a different storage method, one she had learned in her village. Elevated shelves, sealed containers, rotation based on age. Simple, practical, effective. Caspian stood in the doorway and watched her work. She moved with quiet efficiency, directing servants with gentle suggestions rather than commands, solving a problem no one had asked her to solve, because she saw a need and knew how to fill it. The head cook was beaming. You're brilliant, absolute brilliance. We've been losing a quarter of our stores to pests every season. This will save us a fortune, Elwyn shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. It's just common sense. Common sense, Caspian said from the doorway, is remarkably uncommon. She turned, flour dusting her cheek, her silver-white hair escaping from its braid. She looked young, carefree, nothing like the terrified girl kneeling before the council. Your Grace. She dipped into a curtsy that would have been formal if not for the flower handprints on her borrowed dress. Walk with me. It was not a command, not quite, but Elwyn found herself wiping her hands clean and following him from the kitchens. They walked through corridors thick with history, past tapestries depicting great battles, past portraits of kings long dead, through an archway that led to a private garden enclosed by high stone walls. Snow dusted the ground, but the garden still lived, winter roses blooming in defiance of the cold, their scent sharp and clean in the frozen air. Caspian stopped beside a fountain, long dry, a statue of a wolf mid-leap at its center. I need to ask you something. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Anything. What you did in the kitchens, reorganizing the storage, that kind of thinking. Strategic, efficient. Have you always been able to see solutions others miss? Elwyn considered the question. I suppose. When you grow up with nothing, you learn to make the most of what you have, to see opportunities where others see problems. She traced her fingers along the fountain's edge. Why? Because I'm about to make a decision that will scandalize the entire court, and I wanted to be sure it was the right one. He turned to face her fully. I want you to be my personal assistant. The words hung in the frozen air. Your what personal assistant? You'd manage household affairs, coordinate with the stewards, handle logistics. The position has been vacant since my mother died. No one wanted it. Too much work, not enough glory. He smiled slightly. But watching you today, I realized something. You don't want glory. You want to be useful, to solve problems, to make things better. His hand found hers. I could use someone like that. Someone who sees what needs doing and does it. Someone I trust. The council will hate it. Undoubtedly. Isolde will have a seizure. One can hope. Elwyn laughed despite herself. You're serious. Completely. Then yes, I accept. The formal announcement came that evening. Caspian stood before the assembled court, over 300 nobles and servants and guards. He wore his crown and his formal robes. Every inch the Alpha King. Elwyn Frost has accepted the position of Royal Household Manager. She will have full authority over domestic affairs. Her word in matters of the household is second only to mine. Anyone who wishes to protest may do so now. Silence. No one dared. But the looks. The looks could have cut glass. Isolde Ravenna stood among the high-born Omegas. Her perfect face twisted with rage barely contained. A servant Omega, given authority over nobility. It was an insult. A travesty. It was war. The state dinner 3 nights later was a test. Elwyn had coordinated every detail. The seating arrangements, the menu, the timing of courses. She had worked for 2 days straight to ensure everything was perfect. She did not attend as a guest. She stood to the side, observing, ready to address any issues that arose. The nobles filed in, jewels glittering, silks rustling. They took their assigned seats, noted the efficiency with which wine was poured, food served, the seamless flow of the evening. Grudging respect flickered across some faces. Isolde sat 3 seats from Caspian, close enough to be honored, far enough to be insulted. She had fought for the seat beside him, had expected it as her due as the highest-ranking unmated Omega. Elwyn had placed her exactly where protocol demanded. No higher, no lower. It was perfect, appropriate, unassailable. Isolde hated it. Halfway through the meal, she struck. "Tell me, Your Grace." Her voice carried across the hall, sweet as poisoned honey. "How does it feel to have a servant Omega playing at nobility? Does she take her meals in the kitchens? Or have you granted her a seat at the royal table as well?" Conversation died. Every eye turned to Caspian. He set down his wine glass with deliberate care. "Lady Isolde," his voice was silk over steel. "I was unaware you had concerns about household management. Perhaps you'd like to demonstrate your expertise by coordinating next month's ambassadorial visit?" "No, I thought not." He leaned back in his chair. "Elwyn has proven herself more capable in 3 weeks than most nobles manage in a lifetime. If you find that threatening, I suggest you examine why competence intimidates you." Isolde's face flushed scarlet. You merely meant to insult a woman under my personal protection." Caspian's alpha presence flooded the hall. "Let me be extraordinarily clear. Elwyn Frost is not a servant. She is my household manager, my trusted advisor. And anyone who treats her with anything less than the respect her position demands will find themselves looking for new accommodations." He smiled, cold and sharp. "Insult her again. Lose your tongue. I don't make idle threats." Isolde's mouth opened, closed. She looked around for support, found none. The other nobles suddenly became very interested in their food. Caspian returned to his meal as if nothing had happened, but Elwyn felt the bond hum between them, felt his satisfaction, his fierce protectiveness. The message was clear. After the dinner, Elwyn retreated to the library. She needed space, quiet, distance from the stares and whispers and barely concealed contempt. The library was her sanctuary. 3 stories of books climbing toward a vaulted ceiling, ladders on rails, reading nooks tucked into corners. The smell of old paper and leather bindings. She found her favorite spot, a window seat overlooking the gardens, moonlight streaming through ancient glass. She did not hear him approach. "You handled that well." Caspian's voice startled her from her thoughts. He stood in the shadows near a towering bookshelf. Out of his formal robes now, just a simple shirt and dark trousers. His crown abandoned somewhere. Hair disheveled, he looked younger, more human. "I didn't handle anything. You did. You didn't rise to the bait, didn't defend yourself, didn't give her the reaction she wanted." He moved closer. "That takes strength, self-control. Most people would have struck back. Most people aren't terrified of being thrown out of the castle if they cause trouble. Is that what you think, that I'd throw you out?" He sat beside her on the window seat, close enough that she felt his warmth, far enough to give her space. "Elwyn, look at me." She turned. His storm gray eyes were serious. "Intent. You could burn down half the castle, and I wouldn't let you go. You could insult every noble in the territory. You could declare war on the southern kingdoms, and I would still protect you. Why? Because you chose to stay. When I gave you freedom, when I offered you escape, you chose me. Do you have any idea what that means?" His hand found hers. "Every bond I've witnessed was compulsion, force, Omegas who had no choice, Alphas who claimed without asking. But you had a choice, real choice, and you stayed." He brought her hand to his chest, pressed her palm over his heart. Feel that his heart thundered beneath her touch. "That's what you do to me, not the on you, your courage, your kindness, the way you see solutions instead of obstacles, the way you treat servants with the same respect you show nobles. His voice dropped to a whisper. I'm falling in love with you, Elowin Frost. Not because fate demanded it, but because you're extraordinary. She could not breathe, could not think. His face was inches from hers. She could count his eyelashes, could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, could feel his breath against her lips. Caspian. It came out like a prayer. When I kiss you, he began. The door to the library burst open. Captain Marcus, breathing hard, blood on his uniform. Your Grace. Rogue attack on the eastern border. 20 dead. They're asking for you. Caspian's eyes closed. Frustration and duty warring across his features. How many? At least 50 rogues, maybe more. They're organized, coordinated. This wasn't random. He stood, transformed in an instant from gentle suitor to warrior king. Assemble the guard, full armor. We ride in 20 minutes. He looked back at Elowin. Regret etched in every line of his face. When I kiss you, I won't stop. And I won't let anything interrupt us again. Then he was gone. Elowin sat in the window seat, heart racing, lips tingling with phantom sensation. The bond pulled at her ribs, wanting, needing. But beneath the bond, something else stirred, something that had nothing to do with divine mandate. Love, real, chosen, terrifying. She pressed her hand to her chest, felt the silver birthmark beneath her dress, the mark she had hidden her entire life, the mark that sometimes glowed when she felt strong emotion. It was glowing now, faint, but undeniable, violet light seeping through fabric. Elowin pulled her collar aside, stared at the mark. It was changing. Lines that had been simple and circular were branching, spreading, forming patterns that looked almost like writing, ancient writing, a language she did not recognize. Fear clawed up her throat. What was she? The library had answers. Elowin spent the next 3 days buried in books. Caspian was gone, leading his forces against the rogues. She felt him through the bond, felt his exhaustion, his rage, the hot spike of pain when he was wounded. Not seriously, but enough to make her gasp. She wanted to go to him, but she had a different mystery to solve. The forbidden section was in the lowest level of the library, behind a locked door, marked with warnings, dangerous knowledge, restricted access. Caspian had given her a key weeks ago. Use it wisely, he had said, but use it, she used it now. The forbidden texts were old, falling apart, written in languages that shifted between recognizable and alien. But she was patient, methodical. She cross-referenced, compared, pieced together fragments. And slowly, a story emerged. 300 years ago, the North had not been ruled by Alpha Kings alone. They had ruled alongside Omega Queens. Not consorts, not decorations. True queens, with power that rivaled any Alpha. With voices that commanded storms. With bonds to the moon itself that granted them abilities no normal wolf possessed. They were called the Lunar Bloodline. And they were magnificent, until the Council grew afraid. Power in Omega hands threatened the natural order, threatened Alpha dominance, threatened everything the Council had built. So they struck. One night, all across the territories. Omega Queens were murdered in their beds, their children hunted down, their bloodline erased, or so they thought. A few survived. Children smuggled away, hidden, protected. Their powers sealed to hide them from those who would kill them. Seals that looked exactly like Elowin's birthmark. She sat back, hands shaking. She was lunar blood, descendant of queens, carrier of power that should have died 3 centuries ago. And the seal was breaking. Footsteps echoed in the forbidden section. Elowin looked up, expecting a guard, a servant. Instead, Lord Ravencroft stood in the doorway. His silver beard seemed grayer, his eyes older. He looked at her, at the book spread across the table, at the birthmark glowing faintly through her collar. And he smiled. It was not a kind smile. So, the little Omega has been doing research. He moved closer. Did you discover what you are yet? What that mark means? Elowin's hand went to the knife at her belt, the small blade she had carried since her village. Stay back. Or what? You'll cut me. You're not a fighter, child. You're not even a proper Omega. You're an abomination. His voice dripped with venom. Do you know why I pushed for your examination? Why I wanted you locked away? Because 20 years ago, my mate had a mark just like yours. She was lunar blood. Beautiful. Powerful. And the Council killed her for it. Pain cracked through his voice. They came in the night, slit her throat, left our son fatherless, left me broken. He laughed, bitter and broken. And now you appear. Another cursed Omega with the same damn mark. I thought if I could eliminate you, I could finally have revenge. Could hurt them the way they hurt me. But watching you these past weeks, seeing your strength, your kindness, your God's damned resemblance to her. He sank into a chair. I can't do it. I can't kill you, even for her memory. Elowin's grip on the knife loosened. Your mate, what was her name, Seraphina? The name hung between them. She taught me that lunar blood omegas weren't monsters, that power and compassionate hands could change the world. And then they took her from me. He looked up, old eyes meeting young. I'm sorry for the trial, for the imprisonment, for everything. You remind me of her, and I couldn't see past my grief. Elowin should hate him, should curse him for what he put her through. But she saw only a broken man mourning a lost love. Teach me, the word surprised even her. What teach me about lunar blood, about what I am, what I can become? Ravencroft stared. Why would you trust me? Because grief makes people do terrible things, but it doesn't make them irredeemable. She extended her hand. Help me understand what I am, and maybe we both find a way to heal. For a long moment, he did not move. Then he took her hand. The mentorship began that night. Ravencroft brought texts he had hidden for 20 years. His mate's journals, records of lunar blood powers, training methods, histories. Elowin learned. The seal on her power was designed to break gradually, triggered by strong emotion, by bond formation, by danger. When it broke completely, she would be able to shift, not into a normal wolf, into something ancient, powerful, massive. A lunar wolf, the kind of creature that had terrified the council into genocide. But there was a catch. An unsealed lunar wolf without training was dangerous. To themselves. To others, power without control was destruction waiting to happen. She needed to learn control before the seal broke completely. They trained in secret, in the deepest parts of the castle, in hours stolen between her duties and Caspian's absence. Meditation, breathing, visualization. Ravencroft was patient, gentle, nothing like the cold counselor who had condemned her. She began to see glimpses of the man his mate had loved, and slowly, the seal weakened. Her eyes would flash violet when she was angry. Her strength would surge when she lifted heavy objects. She could sense wolves approaching before they rounded corners. Power leaked through cracks in the seal. Building, growing, waiting. Caspian returned on the 7th day. Victorious, wounded, exhausted. Elowin met him in the courtyard. Did not care who watched. Did not care about propriety. She ran to him. He caught her, swung her into his arms, buried his face in her hair. I felt you. Through the bond. Every night. It was the only thing that kept me sane. And I felt you. Every wound. Every fight. She pulled back. Examined the bandage on his shoulder. You're hurt. It's nothing. It's not nothing. She dragged him to his chambers. Made him sit. Unwrapped the bandage with gentle hands. The wound was deep but clean. Already healing. Alpha constitution. Still, she cleaned it. Applied fresh salve. Rewrapped it with efficient care. Where did you learn this, village healer? I helped her sometimes. Learned the basics. You're full of surprises. She finished tying off the bandage. Sat back. Caspian caught her hand. I missed you. 3 words. Simple. Devastating. I missed you too. He pulled her closer. Into his lap. Arms wrapping around her waist. When I was out there fighting, all I could think about was getting back to you. Finishing what we started in the library. His lips brushed her temple. I meant what I said. I'm falling in love with you. Not falling. She turned in his arms. Faced him fully. Fallen. Past tense. Completely. Irrevocably. His storm gray eyes blazed. Elowin, when you kiss me, don't stop. It was permission, invitation, demand. He kissed her, and the world caught fire. It was nothing like the tender kiss in the passage. This was hunger, need, weeks of denial burning away in an instant. His hands tangled in her hair. Her fingers gripped his shirt. The bond sang between them. Electric, overwhelming. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elowin's eyes were glowing violet. Caspian froze. Your eyes, she blinked. The glow faded. I need to tell you something. She told him everything. The research, the lunar bloodline, Ravencroft's mate, the seal breaking. Caspian listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. So you're descended from queens. You have ancient power. And the council will want you dead when they find out. Probably. Good thing I'm very motivated to keep you alive then. He kissed her forehead. We'll figure this out, together. But they had less time than they thought, because Counselor Morgan had been watching, waiting, and she had just discovered exactly what Elowin was. The feast was Isolde's idea, a celebration of the victory over the rogues, a chance for the court to gather, to drink, to forget the violence at their borders. Elowin coordinated every detail, ensured everything was perfect. She did not notice the servants who served her wine were not the usual staff, did not notice the bitter taste beneath the sweetness, not until the world started to blur. Caspian. She reached for him across the bond, but the drug was strong, fast-acting, designed to sever bond communication. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Isolde's smile. Perfect, poisonous, victorious. When Elowen woke, she was in a cell. Stone walls, iron bars, torchlight flickering beyond, and standing outside. Counselor Morrigan. Welcome back, Lunar Blood. We have so much to discuss. Behind her, assassins sharpened blades. The seal on Elowen's birthmark cracked. Violet light spilled through. And somewhere in the castle, Caspian Nightshade felt his mate's terror through the bond. Felt her pain. Felt the moment she was taken. His howl shook the very stones of Nightshade Keep. The hunt had begun. The bond screamed. Caspian Nightshade was in the Great Hall when it hit him. A tsunami of terror crashing through the mate connection. Elowen's fear. Elowen's pain. The desperate mental cry for help that cut off mid-scream. He staggered, hands slamming onto the table for support. Wine glasses shattered. Nobles gasped, but he heard none of it. Because the bond was fracturing. Someone had severed their connection, drugged her, taken her, hidden her somewhere he could not feel. His wolf rose with a roar that was more beast than man. Find her, the command tore from his throat in pure alpha dominance. Every wolf in the hall dropped to their knees, submitted without thought, without choice. Captain Marcus was first to recover. Your Grace. What, Elowen? Someone took Elowen. Caspian's eyes blazed gold. Full wolf surfacing, barely contained beneath human skin. Seal the castle. No one leaves. Search every room, every corridor, every goddamn stone until you find her. His claws extended, shredded the tablecloth. And bring me Isolde Ravenna, now. They found Isolde in her chambers, packing, a bag half full of jewels and coin, evidence of flight, of guilt. Caspian's hand closed around her throat before she could scream. Where is she? Isolde clawed at his grip, gasping, choking. I don't know what. His claws pressed into her skin. Drew blood, the drug in her wine. You served it. I can smell your scent on the glass. Where did you take her? Isolde's perfect composure cracked. The old dungeons, beneath the east wing. Morrigan has her. She paid me, promised me you, once the Lunar Blood was dead. Lunar Blood, so Morrigan knew, had known, perhaps for weeks. Caspian released Isolde, let her crumple to the floor, lock her in the cells. If Elowen dies, so does she. He did not wait for confirmation, did not waste time on armor or weapons or strategy. He shifted mid-run. The Alpha King's wolf was massive, larger than any normal shifter. Midnight black with eyes like molten gold. Power rolled off him in waves that made servants scatter, made guards press against walls. He was not king in this moment. He was predator. And someone had taken his mate. The old dungeons were buried deep, 3 levels below the main castle, accessed through a forgotten stairwell behind the wine cellars. The stone was ancient, crumbling, the air thick with rot and abandonment. Torchlight flickered ahead. Voices. Caspian's wolf moved like smoke through shadows. Silent, deadly. He could smell Elowen. Honey and winter roses. Beneath it, the copper tang of blood. His blood. Her blood. Rage consumed thought. He rounded the corner. The dungeon opened into a circular chamber. Iron cages lined the walls. In the center, Elowen hung from chains. Arms above her head, feet barely touching the ground. Her dress was torn. Blood ran from a cut on her temple. But her eyes, her violet eyes, blazed with defiance. She had not broken. Counselor Morrigan stood before her, flanked by 30 rogues, hired muscle, assassins, men who killed for coin and cared nothing for honor. Behind Elowen, Lord Ravencroft. But he was not watching Morrigan. He was watching the corridor where Caspian's wolf crouched in shadows. Their eyes met. Ravencroft nodded once, then stepped between Elowen and Morrigan. Enough. His voice was steel. This stops? Now. Morrigan's laugh was cold. You've grown soft, Ravencroft. 20 years ago, you wanted all Lunar Blood dead. Hunted them yourself. 20 years ago, I was mad with grief. I'm not that man anymore. He drew his sword. You'll have to go through me to get to her. So be it. Morrigan gestured. 5 rogues lunged. Ravencroft fought like a man half his age, blades singing through air. But 5 against 1 were impossible odds. They overwhelmed him. Drove him to his knees. A blade found his side, slid between ribs. No. Elowen's scream was raw. Ravencroft fell. Blood pooled beneath him. Too much blood. A killing wound. But he smiled, looked at Elowen with old eyes full of peace. You, you remind me of her. His hand reached, touched the silver birthmark glowing through her torn dress. She would have loved you. Make them. Pay. The light left his eyes, and something inside Elowen shattered. The seal on her birthmark exploded. Violet light erupted from her skin like a star going nova. The chains holding her melted, disintegrated. She fell to her knees, hands pressed against stone. Power poured from her in waves that shook the foundations. The rogues stumbled backward, shields raised, terror in their eyes. But nothing could stop what came next. Elowen threw back her head and screamed. The sound was not human, not wolf, something older, something that had slept for 300 years. Her body convulsed, bones cracking, reshaping, muscle and sinew reforming into something magnificent and terrible. The shift was agony, and it was glory. Where Elowen had knelt, a wolf now stood. But to call it a wolf was like calling the ocean a puddle. It was massive, easily twice the size of any alpha. Fur the color of moonlight on fresh snow, silver white that glowed with inner light, eyes like violet fire, ancient, all-seeing, the lunar wolf, the creature that had terrified the council into genocide. Morgan's face went white, impossible. The wolf's lips pulled back, revealed teeth like ice and starlight. When it growled, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. "Kill it!" Morgan shrieked. "Kill it now!" The rogues attacked, and Caspian's wolf exploded from the shadows. Two apex predators, working as one. The battle was carnage. Caspian tore through rogues with savage efficiency, claws and teeth in alpha fury. He was a king on the battlefield, experienced, brutal, unstoppable. But Elowen was vengeance incarnate. She moved with inhuman speed, ethereal, almost ghostly. Rogues swung swords through empty air. She was already gone, already behind them, jaws closing on throats, claws rending armor like paper. She was not trained, did not need to be. Instinct older than memory guided her movements. The lunar wolf had been bred for war, and war was what it gave them. Within minutes, 20 rogues lay dead or dying. The survivors ran, fled like rabbits before wolves. Leaving only Morgan, she backed against the wall, hands raised, all her cold composure shattered. "Please, one. I was only trying to protect the realm. Your power, it's too dangerous." The council feared, the council murdered innocents. Elowen's voice came from the wolf. Layered, echoing, human and beast speaking as one. "You murdered Ravencroft's mate, Seraphina. She was your friend, your ally, and you slit her throat in the night." Morgan's face crumbled. "I had no choice. The others demanded it. She was lunar blood. She had to die." Elowen stepped closer, the wolf massive, overwhelmed.